Sentinel Online, now loading the Geekcast radio network of podcasts.
This is M-Wire, Movie Week in Review. M-Wire is brought to you by Audible.com. Sign up today to get a free audiobook download at www.audibletrial.com/geekcastradio. Start today with a free 30-day trial with over 100,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Don't forget to follow Audible on Twitter at audible_com. And now the latest and greatest in movies with M-Wire. Hello and welcome to the second film in the comic book Summer Spotlight for M-Wire. I am your host, Steve Megatron Phillips. Joining me in this adventure into the amazing are the TFG1 Mike.
That's right.
Movie Revolt.
How's it going?
And Booth Ninja.
Hello.
Hello. What's up, guys?
Oh, not much. Just listening to all the different varying opinions on the movie we'll eventually give our own opinions on. But I think the general consensus is, and we'll get into this once we get to amazing, but the general consensus is it's
amazing.
Not the worst thing ever, but it's not the best thing ever.
But it still gets a 10 out of 10, right?
For me, it does.
Well, I mean, that's I was reading. I read a little bit of Movie Revolt's review, and I have to admit I started just skimming his. But I actually read all of yours, Mike, because it was shorter. But I got to the end of it, and it was like it's not the best and it's not the worst, but then you gave it all 10 out of 10s, which was
because I really enjoyed it.
I understand that, but if it was the movie being like compared against anything, or like
I wasn't trying to, because the way I look at it, and again we're kind of jumping ahead here because we should be talking about the Raimi-verse first, but when I wrote the review and when I went to go see the film, I didn't put it up against the Raimi films when I was watching it and when I was writing it the review. The Raimi films are what they are. This is a brand new imagining. It essentially does retell the origin story, but it does it in such a way that I found it so different and unique because it focuses more on what the hell happened to his parents versus the classic, I was irresponsible because I let the robber go and then Uncle Ben died.
Well, I wasn't say like were you asking if you were comparing it against the other Raimi movies. I was, because your what you said was it's not the best superhero movie and it's not the worst. So it's like you were in that sentence you like compared it to, you put it in a sea of other comic book movies, and it came out mediocre. But
okay, well
that's what I was getting.
Yeah, it's the worst of all of comic book movies, regardless of, even the stuff in the 40s. The worst comic book movie ever, in my opinion, is Elektra. That movie is just utter shit.
Can we put Daredevil in there with that?
No, I like Daredevil's good. Daredevil's not like number one, but it's like in the top 10 for me. Elektra I would never watch unless someone forced me to, ever again. I would most compare Amazing Spider-Man to, as far as being not the best but not the worst, but it's, it's slightly below. It's not slightly. It's probably a tie with Iron Man 2, in my opinion, as far as overall enjoyment of it. So. I don't know.
All right. So what are we starting with first?
Alrighty. Well, I think it's only fitting. Since one M-Wire we did not. We did kind of cover the other Spider-Mans, but I think we should talk about at least very briefly the likes and dislikes of the original trilogy before we jump into the information on the new one.
Yeah, I said that to Steve because we should have been doing it when we did because we didn't really keep up with the Marvel franchise stuff until we got to Avengers, and then in Avengers we started talking about the movies that led up to it, and that's where I was kind of going with this, where we should start with the Raimi-verse. So, Mike, why don't you go first? What were your opinions of the first three?
Well, it's pretty much the general consensus that's out there is that I actually enjoyed the first two. I did not enjoy the third one. I actually have a funny story about the third one, but the first one, it was good, but there was, for me, I thought it was for what it was. I thought it was really well done. I thought it was really well acted. Um, but some of the effects didn't play out as well, and it definitely hasn't aged as well uh, as Sony probably hoped it would have. Some of the scenes looked like they're straight out of like a video game cutscene,
Mm-hmm.
and luckily with more money, that was not really too much of an issue with Spider-Man 2,
Mm.
which I actually uh, saw that movie 3 times in one day.
Wow.
I think that's the only movie that I've ever done that for.
So you liked it, is what you're saying.
I did, and what really actually surprised me, and even to this day, like watching it at home, the train scene, where he's trying to stop the train,
Mm-hmm.
like had me on the edge of my seat all 3 times in the theater. Even though, like, even after the first time, I I still was on the edge of my seat, like, oh my God, he's not going to stop the train, even though I knew damn well that he was. But the thing is that Raimi does such a good job with the second movie of up to that point, nothing goes right for Peter.
Yeah.
And it's almost coming to the point where this may not even go right for him now. And it's just so, the way he does it is just so good that it got me every single time I watched the movie. And even watching it at home, I still get that reaction, 10 years later, well, 8 years later, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I think I saw it 3 times. I saw it 3 times in one day, and I never saw it again in the theater. So, because that was just too much. I went to the midnight show, the 10 a.m. show, and then the 10 p.m. show. So, and then Spider-Man 3. I was actually working at a movie theater when that movie came out, and we had to preview the movies, and that at that time it was filmed, so you had to have 3 different projectors playing after midnight, so 3 different people could watch a movie. So 3 different people would watch the movie to make sure everything was correct. Well, the movie that I was watching started last. Like, I started two prints first, and I started mine last, and I went downstairs and I was watching it, and then I heard a call over the radio from one of the other houses that someone said that the picture was messed up. So I ran upstairs to the projection booth so I could see what was going on. Well, the guy that had built it put the reel together backwards, which ends up making the picture upside down. So the reel played backwards and upside down. And what's really funny is it's after he had gotten... I didn't know what scene it was when I saw it, but all I knew when I looked out the window was someone got Batman and Robin in my Spider-Man. Because at this point, the film that I was watching was okay. Like, I don't think he was even halfway through the movie when this happened in the other one. So my movie was still okay, and I ran upstairs and I saw this, and it's the scene where he's in the jazz bar.
Oh yeah.
Except now it's playing upside down, and I was like, "Whoa, what the hell movie is this?" So there's nothing I can do while it was playing. So the poor girl had to watch the movie like that, and I went back down and sat in my movie, and I was like, I can't even like this movie now because I know what's coming. And even if mine was put together the right way and the scene played the right way, I still knew it was coming, and I just had like my hands over my eyes the whole time. I was like, why? That, and I always felt like when they offed the Sandman, like in the middle of the movie, that should have been it.
Yeah.
I don't think he should have come back. And I didn't like the various endings to the movie, and I didn't like the action scene playset that was blatant toy for the
Yeah.
finale. Like,
Yeah.
here's your tower. You put it in a sandbox, and you have all these figures.
I didn't even think of that. Yeah.
That's the only thing I saw was here's a half constructed tower and a construction set. You can put it in your sandbox, and look, we gave you Green Goblin, and he's cool with the snowboard, and it's like, okay, I'm done. So that's he did right by two, and I know he got some stuff crammed down his throat for the third one, and he left the fourth one because Sony tried to cram more shit down his throat. Um, but now we've got Amazing Spider-Man. So
Yeah. What about you, Dan? What are your thoughts on the original films?
I'm a big fan of the original films. Like Mike said, I do think this first Spider-Man film has suffered with age. A lot of the CGI does not hold up, but the first half of that film I think is excellent. It's one of the best origin stories I think told in comic books. It's very economical. It tells a story at a very quick pace. It's both funny and very heartfelt. There's a lot of emotions as well as some good time, good humor. Macho Man always makes any movie better. Um, Spider-Man 2, I still think is one of the best Spider or comic book films ever. I put it in my top five. I think it raised the bar for comic book movies. Um, the train sequence is one of my all-time favorite action set pieces. I think it's amazing, well done. Everything leading up to that moment with Doctor Octopus, throwing people off the train and Spider-Man catching them, to their fight on top of it, to the moments afterwards. I think that's a great moment. And I think what's great about Spider-Man 2 is Sam Raimi it allowed Sam Raimi to use his technique with horror. You saw a lot of that with Doctor Octopus, with the use of puppetry and CGI
hmm
for his arms, especially the hospital sequence. That's straight out of a Sam Raimi movie. And then with Spider-Man 3, I'm with that universal opinion that does not like that film. A lot of people harping on the emo Spider-Man and the misuse of Venom. I think my biggest issue really was what they did with Uncle Ben, making the Sandman responsible for killing Uncle Ben.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge mistake because Spider-Man's origin, I think, is the most important origin for any comic book hero.
It's just
His
supposed to be some kind of a punk that just kills him.
That and the whole Spider-Man is built upon the idea of responsibility. With great power comes great responsibility. His lack of responsibility is what leads to Uncle Ben dying. Taking that away from him, taking that and giving it to somebody else, saying, no, it wasn't that guy that you could have stopped, it was someone else, kind of takes that away. It removes that very important part of his character, and I thought that was a huge mistake, and it felt like a quick way to get to an emotional reaction to that character.
well,
Um,
it also gave him a reason to be mad, which fed
y-
into the symbiote thing, which I thought was just like I understand that the symbiote feeds off of anger and that's how it personifies things, and it's just kind of like they went back there so that they could have a reason for him. They couldn't think of another reason for Peter to be angry at this point.
exactly. They didn't know what to do. That's what it felt like. They just didn't know what to do. If you can tell, people are just frustrated in that film. People don't seem like they want to be there. Like they're
Mm.
not really giving that much effort. James Franco seems lost. He seems lost in general, but he seems really lost in that movie.
Well,
Um,
you show up drunk to the Oscars.
yeah, but even with Spider-Man 3, I kind of throw it to the side. It's a failure. I think it's really disappointing. It's one of I think I can't. I remember the first image of Spider-Man in the black suit and like being so excited and then being massively disappointed. But still, I still think Spider-Man 1 and 2 are very important in comic book history because without them, there's a good chance we wouldn't have the Dark Knight, the Avengers, because movies, it went from it being a blockbuster hit to being an event. They were bigger
Yeah.
than movies. Like you had all the commercials, the tie-ins. They were huge events, and because of that success of Spider-Man, like we have the summer of 2012, this year. So
Mm. What about you, Steve, for the first three?
Honestly, I have to agree with both Dan and Mike here on this one, just because while I did like the first one, the second one has a lot more uh, power to it. and then that third film, there's too much going on. It feels like watching Batman and Robin all over again.
Mm,
It's
yeah.
just it was just a mess.
I said in my as far as my thoughts, the first film was great. My only real gripe about that film is the stupid goblin mask that you can actually see Willem Dafoe's face through the mask. That's they could have done that. Even by 2002 standards of movie making, they could have done that mask a little bit better.
Well,
Have you seen the footage of it was like prototype footage of like the mask that kind of looked closer to the comic book that they tested? They released it, I think, earlier last year. It looks just like the comic book. It's more like rubbery, but the emotions and like you can see his face move. And I was curious why they didn't go that route.
Mm,
It's probably online someplace. I'm not sure exactly, but it looks to me it looks amazing. It looks just like the comic books, but it still looks kind of real. And I
yeah.
agree. I think that like people say, it's like the Power Rangers mask of Green Goblin. It just does not
Yeah,
hold up very well.
that was my one big main gripe of Spidey 1. Other than that, I absolutely loved the movie when it came out. I don't know what it is though about broadcasting rights nowadays, because since Amazing has come out, FX has shown and reshown Spider-Man 2.1 and Spider-Man 3 multiple times in the last month and a half. Yet I have yet to see Spider-Man 1 air on TV at all. That makes no sense to me whatsoever. Um, as far as Spider-Man 1, yeah, I mean, overall the origin story is there. That's great. Spider-Man 2 is amazing. I absolutely love that. You know, like you guys said, the train sequence. What I really loved about these first two films is it felt, well, Spider-Man 2 is obviously better than Batman Returns, but it felt to me like the first two Batman movies, simply because of one man, Danny Elfman. That music score in both Spider-Man 1 and 2 was just simply amazing.
oh,
When you get
see, I disagree, but keep going.
you Danny Elfman hater. What I mean about the music is that it had that it had that epic feel that it brought an epicness to each of the scenes in both throughout both films.
Yes.
And then you get to Spider-Man 3, and I'm not the biggest hater of Spider-Man 3. I can overlook a lot of the stuff. I think that if I understand that Raimi got a lot of stuff forced on him. I know he wanted to tell the story of the Sandman. I think that was the wrong way to go. I think they should have flipped it. He should have embraced the studios saying you should put Venom in and tell the Eddie Brock story and tell it from Brock's point of view after Peter takes the suit off. I think you could have resolved the Sandman stuff up within 5 minutes of the film. And then the rest of the film just be a Venom movie. And, you could have the Harry stuff in there still, but to me, Sandman was the worst part of Spider-Man 3. I actually liked the Venom stuff. I think Topher Grace was a complete and utter douchebag version of Eddie Brock, and he couldn't bring the anger that Eddie, say, in the '94 cartoon series had. But
Well, they needed somebody bulkier anyway. He's kind of a
Yeah.
scrawny runt to
Yeah.
be playing Venom.
yeah,
Well, I think they were trying to get. I think they didn't want to go too comical with it because Venom changes size like at will. Like he's almost at times he almost appears hulkish,
yeah,
and it's kind of like, well, I think they had to decide does it really change the persona or the look of the actual person, or is it just like a suit? And it was kind of like they went 50-50 with it. It was like, yeah, it's just a normal guy wearing a suit, but then the mask has a mind of its own. So
yeah.
it just kind of didn't work. And I agree with you about the Sandman stuff.
I mean, it was just an excuse to me to put in Lowell from Wings. That's really all it. I mean, let's face it. What the hell has Thomas Hayden Church done in the last 20 years outside of Wings and Ned and Stacy? I mean, come on.
Sideways.
Well, okay, there is that.
But besides that, not much. I mean, he was in Easy A and a few others, but he I believe he was also nominated for an Oscar. But ever since, and that's when after he got nominated for that Oscar, he was put in Spider-Man. But after that, he's kind of been nowhere really. He hasn't really taken advantage of it. But like, I agree with what you guys said regarding Sandman. I think he's underdeveloped. But I think with Eddie Brock, I think they needed to establish that character first for a film before like putting him in a Spider-Man, making him Venom. I think it would have been better if they ended Spider-Man 3 with him getting the symbiote and then starting Spider-Man 4 with Venom, kind of allowing the story to develop. But
Yep.
Yeah. The final thing I'll say about the Raimi-verse is that, and this is something I will be bringing up, comparing the two actors for Peter/Spidey, is I know the Raimi-verse is the 616 Marvel Universe and Amazing Spider-Man is Ultimate, but I'm sorry, I have, going back and rewatching Spider-Man, because I have it on iTunes, the first film, going back and watching all three films, and watching Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker, nowadays, I think that was the worst choice for Peter Parker, because Tobey Maguire, I know Peter Parker's a geek, he's a nerd, he's supposed to have those, tendencies of not knowing what to say and not speaking up for himself. I get that, but I think Maguire's performances just took it overload with nerdity, and I just didn't really like it all that well. And to the flip of that coin, I didn't like how extreme he went with the cockiness in 3. That was just I wanted to shoot myself when I saw the dancing scene.
I think everybody did.
So now we can be prepared to be amazed, I guess, right, Steve?
Well, wait.
What?
Can I say one thing real quick?
Yes.
Going back to about your gripe with the mask for the Green Goblin.
Mm-hmm.
I was always under the impression that seeing his face under the mask was not like a sign of like a cheap like costume design. Mm-hmm. I always took the Goblin as a whole, and I think it came from the movie and like maybe a commentary track or something. But the Goblin design as a whole was a military application. And I always took the helmet as he just modified whatever the protective helmet would have been for the actual rider. So I think it was actually supposed to be a helmet, not necessarily a mask, but a helmet. I think that was always its intended purpose.
Okay, if it was intended to be a helmet, there are plenty of helmets that cover the entire face. I mean, you can the whole helmeted head of the Green Goblin costume is like 3 times the size of Willem Dafoe's head. I mean, it just...
Willem Dafoe's head's kind of big.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's not 3, maybe 1.5 times the size of his head.
You know what I mean, damn it.
I think he was also trying to be menacing. That's why I said it's a modified version of whatever the practical helmet the rider would have worn. I think he was trying to be menacing, because if you're... Also, the other thing... about the Green Goblin is that there was kind of that Jekyll and Hyde thing going on there.
There is, yeah.
The Goblin would want to be menacing, and I don't think he's going to go and put on a rubber mask. He's going to want some kind of protection, even if it is ostentatious. I'm just saying, like, I can see what you're saying. The mask doesn't play well, and at the time I thought it was okay. Looking back on it, thinking about it now, I can agree with you, but I always took it from like a practical application that's just how it was going to roll.
All as I'm saying is, it's fine the way it is. All they have to do is fill in the little holes that you don't see the person. The whole point of masks is so you don't learn the person's identity. Anyone can look at the Green Goblin mask and know that that's Willem Dafoe's face under it. That's my problem. You can still have that exact same mask. Just fill out all the areas. It would have been more menacing if you didn't show Willem Dafoe's skin and face through the mask. That's all I'm saying.
Or they could have went even creepier and went with the 90s animated series version, where it's almost like the green face of the mask from the mask.
I guess I need to rewatch it, because all I could remember seeing was his mouth when they did an up close shot through the mesh. I don't ever remember being able to see his entire face. I remember being able to see his mouth as he was talking on a close up shot through the mesh, but I don't remember being able to see like his face. So maybe I need to rewatch it.
You could see his. Yeah, you're right. You can see his mouth, but you can also see in this image I'm going to link to you guys. It doesn't show it, but the eyes the eyes on the mask also come up. And when the eyes are up and they're not yellow because those eyes are a part of that military application you were talking about, the eyes reveal themselves. Like the yellow eyes come up and you can still see his face. That's what I'm talking about. But yeah, you're right.
But honestly, this mask, I can see it did work. I didn't like it at the time, but it does kind of fit.
Yeah.
So, anything else?
I just wanted to throw in about the mask. That's all.
No, that's cool.
We can move on.
All right. So with that, we'll be going to the trailer and coming back after this.
This life is not an easy one. I've made enemies. Powerful enemies. I've put those I love in danger. But the one thing that has haunted me my entire life is finding the truth about my parents.
You're a wanted man, Peter Parker.
You don't believe what the police are saying, do you?
My dad has 500 officers looking for you.
500? That seems a bit excessive. You know, if you're gonna steal cars, don't dress like a car thief. You found my weakness. It's small knives. Who are you?
Tell us a little bit about yourself, Mr. Parker. What did your father do, Peter?
I never really knew my father. My parents left when I was very young.
Peter, someday you'll understand.
Did you tell the boy about his father?
Dr. Connors. I'm Richard Parker's son.
If you want the truth about your parents, Peter, come and get it. Ready to play God.
There's been a biological attack on New York City.
Peter, secrets have a cost.
I gotta stop him.
Do you think what happened to you, Peter, was an accident? Do you have any idea what you really are?
And yes, as you heard in the trailer, we are talking about The Amazing Spider-Man, which is the newest rendition, and thankfully not a Spider-Man 4. TFG1, would you like to take over on the scripted information?
Yes, The Amazing Spider-Man, which is rated PG-13 from the MMPAA or whatever the hell that super secret organization is.
The Motion Picture Association
Yeah,
of America.
sorry, I've been watching this. This film is not yet rated today, so it's 136-minute action adventure fantasy. It came out July 3rd, 2012. Peter Parker finds a clue that might help him understand why his parents disappeared when he was young. His path puts him on collision course with Dr. Kurt Connors, his father's former partner. Directed by Marc Webb, written by James Vanderbilt for the screenplay, Alvin Sargent for the screenplay, and there are other credits as well. Starring as Spider-Man Peter Parker, we have Andrew Garfield. Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy. Rhys Ifans is the Lizard / Dr. Kurt Connors. Dennis Leary is Captain Stacy. Martin Sheen is Uncle Ben. Sally Field is Aunt May. And a bunch of other people as well. Campbell Scott plays Richard Parker, and M. Beth Davids plays Mary Parker.
She was Miss Honey in Matilda.
And she was in Miss Doubtfire.
Yep.
And a bunch of old movies with Burt Reynolds.
Yes. So I guess we're just gonna discuss the beginning parts of the film, or like when for this first part, we're gonna talk about when we each first heard about it and what we each first thoughts. When I saw the trailer, I was really excited. I'm gonna get this out of the way right now. Yes, it's been 5 years since Spider-Man 3. Yes, it's only been 10 years since the original Spider-Man 1. to me, that doesn't matter because it's a Spider-Man movie and it is a different story. So the passage of time on between the original films and a reboot for this superhero does not matter to me at all.
Well, okay, from my way back when they first announced the first Spider-Man, okay, I obviously anyone that knows anything about comics knows that there's like at any given point in time there's like 4 or 5 Spider-Man comics going on. You know, there's Spider-Man,
like
there's
the Batman of Marvel.
Yeah, there's Spider-Man, there's Amazing Spider-Man, there's Spectacular Spider-Man, there's Ultimate Spider-Man. Put a word in front of it, Spider-Man.
Fantastic Four, Avengers with Spider-Man.
Yeah, so from the very beginning, I always thought, because at that time, movies kind of came in trilogies, or they were starting to come in trilogies. So I kind of was like, okay, the first one's going to be, they're going to do 3 movies with Spider-Man, and then they're going to do another 3, and it's going to be like Spectacular Spider-Man, or Amazing Spider-Man, or whatever. That was always my impression from the very beginning. And then after the third one, and Sony was trying to punch around and make a 4th one and whatnot, and everyone kind of followed that one with bated breath, and eventually Sony got everyone to line up and march in the right direction. You know, Tobey Maguire and Sam Raimi and Kirsten Dunst, for better or worse. And then they tried to get him to do the Vulture in the movie, and with John Malkovich, and they wanted it done by. But it's kind of like the same thing that happened with X-Men 3, really. They wanted Spider-Man 4 done by like last year or something. And Raimi was like, I can't do that. There's no way. So he walked. And so Sony was like, I'm going to make another movie. And I was like, okay. They're going to make another one. And for me, it's not so much it's 5 years since there was a Spider-Man movie. It's actually more like 7 years since there was a good Spider-Man movie. And I will say, like, right from the get-go, when they announced Marc Webb, I did not know who he was outside of 500 Days of Summer, which when I actually tried to get that from Netflix, they sent me 2 discs of it that did not work. So I have not been able to watch that movie, but I know a lot of people did enjoy it. So I was like, okay, plus everyone seemed to think that he had a handle on relationship, like showing relationships on screen. So I was like, okay, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. And then I saw The Social Network with Andrew Garfield. And for as small of a role as he had, I think he stole the scene in any scene that he was in.
Oh, yeah.
So I was like, all right. Then they announced Emma Stone, and everyone thought she's going to be Mary Jane because she's a redhead. But then it turns out that she's actually blonde and not red. So then everyone's like, oh, she's going to be Gwen Stacy. I said, I don't freaking care. It's Emma Stone.
Exactly.
And then everything else just kind of started falling into place. And then there was like little tidbits about how Brian Michael Bendis was going to help out with some things here and there. And so that immediately made me go, okay, it's going to have an Ultimate Spider-Man kind of vibe to it. So I kind of knew what to expect. Then there was the whole we're going to do it in 3D thing, which kind of made me cringe a little bit. I didn't have any problem with anyone that they cast in the movie. Not one. So I really didn't have anything bad going for this movie. Even after, even seeing the first trailer, like, gave me goosebumps. It evoked seeing, like, I don't know, a Batman trailer. Like getting goosebumps from like watching the Dark Knight trailer, like the first one. Like I had that same kind of feeling watching like an Amazing Spider-Man trailer, which I have not had with Dark Knight Rises trailer yet. I have not had that moment. I'm not saying they're bad trailers, but I just haven't had that moment. So I was just super excited for this movie, and then there it was.
I think the difference between the ASM trailers and the Dark Knight Rises trailers is, you said it to me on Twitter a couple weeks ago before we were going to record this. We all know. Okay, we don't know what's going to happen in Dark Knight Rises, but we all know what to expect from Christopher Nolan's filmmaking and his team's version of Batman. So we all know kind of what to expect, but this, we didn't know what to expect at all.
Yeah, it was Yeah, with the exception of like Emma Stone and Dennis Leary, for me it was like a relative cast of unknown people.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like I told you, Nolan stuff is kind of for me. Just hear me out here. Nolan's Batman verse is kind of fallen into that the Transformers slump for me, where I actually enjoyed the first Transformers because it was someone finally put giant freaking robots on the screen. And with the second movie, there are other reasons the second movie is bad, but for me, the second movie and the third one didn't have the same impact as the first one because you've already tipped your hand. You can't really show me something new. So that it's so yeah, it's didn't know what to expect from Spider-Man. That's why I've said from the very beginning of the summer, even the year, that Amazing Spider-Man is my most anticipated movie of the year. I don't think it's going to be the best movie of the year.
Right.
But it's definitely my most anticipated. So.
What about you, Dan?
Went down with Spider-Man 3, and I was kind of not sure what my emotions would be towards Spider-Man 4. I kind of thought, okay, maybe they kind of, they got knocked down in Spider-Man 3, but maybe with Spider-Man 4 they can get back up and make a better movie. Maybe the studio will step away and give Raimi more power. They can see that them stepping in made it not work. But then there's more griping, there's more fighting, and when they reset it and they're like, okay, we're going to reboot the franchise, I thought it was a mistake. I thought, like, this is ridiculous. I was, the normal fanboy reaction. I started coming around once the casting started showing up. I have seen 500 Days of Summer. I'm a huge fan of it. It's actually my favorite movie of that year when it came out. So when they hired Marc Webb, I was like, wow, that's actually an interesting choice for director. It's not obvious choice. He obviously isn't. He's a director that they can kind of push around a little bit because he's not one that has weight to him. He's not a director for himself all that much. But what I do like about Marc Webb, with what I saw in 500 Days of Summer, is he does understand relationships. He understands the difference between the way we perceive relationships and the reality of them. So I thought, that's the one thing that was missing from the Raimi films. The love interest never really felt real in those movies. It was there, it was an element, but it was never an atmosphere. So I thought, that's something that can be different with this movie. When they announced Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man, again, I was excited. Like we mentioned, he's in Social Network. He's also in a lesser-known film called Boy A, which I really enjoy. He's a teenager in that as well, and I think that movie was like 10 years ago, and he's still playing a teenager now. But if you haven't seen that movie and you liked his performance in Social Network and in Spider-Man, I would definitely advise checking that out. But anyways, and then as more casting came, I became more and more of a fan. Huge fan of West Wing, so when they hired President Bartlett to be Uncle Ben, I was like, wow, that's a really smart choice. Emma Stone, huge fan of hers. Like, Emma Stone has the ability to kind of take charge, and she owns the screen. Kirsten Dunst doesn't have that. She kind of is just there.
The other thing I noticed about Emma Stone is not just with Amazing Spider-Man, but she seems to be able to play about any age anybody wants her to play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Because it's weird. She's been, for the most part, she's played like teenagers and stuff, but she's in I've seen the trailer for the Gangster Squad.
Yes.
That she's in, and also Crazy Stupid Love, where she's supposed to play somebody slightly older than she is, and she has no problem in those roles. Like, it's just weird. It's
last year she was in The Help, and she was playing like college age, about to like just graduated from college. Now she's back in high school, so she has the ability to kind of, just with a little bit of a haircut and bang, she can look 5 years older and really seem like a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, I did get a little apprehensive when I saw the first trailer because I didn't like the idea of telling the origin story again. I thought maybe they could do what they did with the Hulk, where they kind of gloss over it, but they kind of move on from there. But as I saw more and more from it, if I saw the costume that I liked, I dug the look of it a lot, and even dug it more in the movie. I became more and more of a fan. So my anticipation kind of has gone in waves. depending on what I saw. But so when I came in, I didn't know what I was going to expect. Like a lot of the things I liked going in, a lot of the things I didn't like. And in the end, that's kind of, we'll get into it, but in the end, but we'll get into that.
Yeah. What about you, Steve?
Well, first of all, being that the original trilogy I had seen in theater for every film, while I did like the origin stories for those, I much prefer the job that they did in this film. Not only for the sake of how they told the story, but also some additional backstory. They gave more resonance to everything. I much preferred the mechanical web shooters over the
organic,
the pus in his hands, which miraculously runs out, and yet these did not until they were destroyed. So that was a little bit of a pet peeve, but no, I definitely liked the portrayals. The only acting people in this film that I knew of before walking into it was Emma Stone, Dennis Leary, Martin Sheen, and Sally Field. The rest of them were all new to me. I've not seen Marc Webb's other film, nor do I care to see it even to this day. And I have not seen Social Network, so I would have never seen Andrew Garfield in that, and I still have no ambition to see that.
Social Network was okay. It was a pretty decent film for what it is.
I turned my nose to it just because it's a movie about the story of Facebook and the guy that created it.
So much more than that.
Yeah, I know, but it's just I don't know. The whole concept doesn't interest me.
I can get that. I get behind that.
I love that movie, but I understand if it doesn't appeal to you. It doesn't appeal to you.
I understand that it's probably a good film, and I'm not going to knock it because obviously I haven't seen it. But it just, like I said, doesn't appeal to me, so I'll probably never see it. But kudos to those that wanted to see it. But I think that this film did a much better job with it, as far as the cast, as far as their interactions over the previous trilogy. And it seems like the Spider-Man movies of past, the first one did pretty well. The second one amplified everything more to where it should have been. And then the third film took it down a spiral, crashing into lower than the dirt. But I don't know, this whole film just, it seemed to resonate more after seeing it. I will be the first to admit, before this film came out, and before I saw it, I was not too keen on it just because I was like, Spider-Man, I've seen it already. And then the more I found out about it beforehand, the more I wanted to see it. And then, of course, after seeing it, I walked out thinking, wow, this was a damn good movie. I wouldn't mind sitting through this again, whereas the previous trilogy, I don't really know how many times I could sit there and watch it despite owning them.
Yeah. For me, when I first saw the very first teaser, it was that first-person view teaser of him swinging.
Mm-hmm.
And I swear to God, the first thing I thought of, and I still want this to this day, I want a Spider-Man version of Mirror's Edge. Because that's the first thing I thought of when I saw that, was like, holy shit, it's Spider-Man in Mirror's Edge.
I agree with what you're saying. I think actually Twitter exploded with a bunch of Mirror's Edge comparisons.
Mm-hmm.
And we can talk about this later because I know both Steve and I saw this movie in 3D, and I have an interesting gripe if we actually get to a point where we can talk about that, about 3D, but and more so like in this movie, not 3D in general, but
right.
I was looking forward to that stuff, and I felt like they pulled a lot of punches. But I'll talk more about that later.
What I've noticed about, and this is where I'm gonna take the time to talk about the trailers, because I have now that I've gone back and I've listened to other people point out stuff that I might have missed, I really have an issue with this film when it comes to the fact that I know that movie companies, third-party the trailer assembly to other companies. I understand that, but there is stuff in the Amazing Spider-Man trailers that is not in the movie. There's one thing that's in the trailer that's not in the movie. The whole my dad has 500 cops after you. Only 500?
Well, there's that, and there's everything to do with the lizard. Like,
yeah, well, that's like I actually because we had just we just passed up Avengers back in May. Okay, Avengers. Even though I didn't stay till the second credit scene, them sitting around palling around.
yeah.
I did stay for the Thanos scene, and I was like, okay, cool. That's a good after credits scene. It's going to lead to Thanos eventually in Avengers 2. I actually stayed on Amazing Spider-Man until the screen went blue, thinking that they were going to have a second end credit scene, because the end credit scene in Amazing Spider-Man is in the fucking trailer.
Okay, all right. I think there's a reason for that, and I've been reading probably a lot of the same articles you have been. I think because there's a lot that's in the trailers, which is why when I was like reading the spot about you guys playing like the trailer in the show that when it goes up, which was I was going to say, so they like try and play the trailer that has the least omitted stuff from the movie. Mm-hmm. But the trailer is like littered with it, and it really all has to do with the untold story. The untold story is really only like 5 minutes of this movie.
Yeah.
And I feel like this movie, for me, I can't really rate this movie until I actually see it. Like, I mean, I like the movie. I think it's great as a theatrical release. But I think when it comes home, I think we're gonna see a director's cut. If not, you're gonna see a whole crapload of deleted scenes. But I was disappointed as you were that the credit scene was spoiled in the trailers. But thinking about it now, I think they did that, and I think they removed what they did because they kind of realized what they had, and it was like, if we just put this in the end, even though we kind of spoiled it, we can hold everything over for like the second or third movie.
Yeah,
go
ahead.
I was just gonna say, I feel like this movie was all set up for something much bigger.
Yeah, and I agree with that. My problem with finding out about the differences between the trailer and the actual cut in theaters is that the way they make it seem in the trailer is that there is this big bad behind all of this stuff, and does he really know about his father? And none of that is in the movie, and that's fine. They didn't put that in there. They didn't shoehorn it in there. That's all well and good. But then why have that at the... That's not understand. Why did I don't know.
I think what they decided to do... I think when they made this, I don't know if they knew what... Like you mentioned, they knew what they had. I don't know if they knew if they were going to do a second or a third. And after they announced the trilogy, I think what they realized is they kind of want to spread out the origin of Spider-Man, like the secret origin behind Spider-Man. So what they cut out a huge amount of that, including like with the lizard, there's that that extra character, I forget his exact name, played by Irv Khan. Like his character, he's in the film and he disappears after the bridge sequence. There were actually videos online of him like fighting the lizard online that were taken down and were never in the movie, and a lot of it was because those moments really revealed a lot of Peter Parker's origin and what happened behind him becoming Spider-Man, and maybe the reason he has the powers is beyond just getting bitten. Like there's kind of implications, like his dad did what Bruce Banner's dad did in the first Ang Lee's Hulk. Like they did some testing before when he was a kid. I think, and they removed a lot of that because they want to kind of put it in the second and third film. Personally, I don't think you need that information. I don't think you need the secret origins behind what made Spider-Man Spider-Man. I think what's great about Spider-Man is he became a superhero by happenstance. He's an everyman that, by chance, is now a superhero. I think that's a big part of his character. So to kind of throw in this destiny type of aspect to it, I'm not a huge fan of that. Maybe they can do it well, but I really hope that's not where it goes.
It's not all that different from, like we keep saying, it's not all that different from what was laid down in Ultimate Spider-Man, or in the Ultimate Universe for that matter. I feel like it's I just feel like everything that was laid down has larger ramifications.
Yeah, and I agree with that.
Beyond like Parker, like we talked about this a little bit with the Avengers, and how some people think it's like they want to see Spider-Man in the Avengers, and some people think it's a bad idea to see Spider-Man in the Avengers, and then there's talk about how that will never happen. But we already know that Sony and Marvel were talking about putting the Oscorp building in Avengers, and that they were going to put Stark Tower in Spider-Man. But it didn't, special effect wise, it didn't work out because the building renderings were on two different scales and they couldn't work it out soon enough.
Right.
What I feel like this movie did, and I'm going way out on a limb here, kind of a little fanboyish, and because I'm a massive fan of the Ultimate Universe, I think they did a lot of this movie feels like it could be part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Right down to the scene in Oscorp where they're showing like the genetic tree and like all the lab testing that they did with all that was straight up Tony Stark in his garage stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it said Oscorp technology on it, but that's kind of, and it would be Oscorp technology even if it was in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but that's very much that's Stark tech for the most part. And I feel like this movie, the bigger ramifications of just what his dad was doing, because it's been at least a year since I reread all like 100 or so issues of Ultimate Spider-Man and the Ultimate Universe, but his parents did some crazy shit, and like mutants were actually bred genetically, and I think there was like a storyline where Peter Parker may or may not actually be a mutant in the Ultimate Universe. I'm trying to remember, but I can't really because I didn't reread them in preparation for this. But it just feels like they tried to paint a bigger picture, and when they announced they're going to do Spider-Man 2, they're like, let's just hold this stuff out. So, and the other thing I think they did was they set up a reason for Peter to be angry, so that they could possibly maybe do Venom the right way, without screwing with things. He has other things to be like upset about and tormented about, and it has to do with his family. So it's just I think they did a much better. This movie at least sets up sequels a lot better.
I know, before I get into the box office, before we get into the actual meat and potatoes of the film, I know that it hasn't really been said, and there's speculation of who that was in the end credit sequence and in the trailer. But throughout the entire film, I felt like it was Norman, because the dude from the bridge works for Norman. So why wouldn't that be Norman Osborn talking to Dr. Kurt Connors and that's my only thing. But I know some people have said to me, "Oh, well, there was a Flash. It could be Mysterio. It could be Electro. It could be this. It could be that." We just don't know. The only thing I'm going to bring up before I get into box office is Emma Stone has been in two different things with two different versions of Dr. Kurt Connors. Emma Stone was in Drive with Dylan Baker. It was a Fox television series, and Dylan Baker played Kurt Connors in Spider-Man 2. And she's playing Gwen Stacy here in Amazing with a new Kurt Connors. So that was very interesting to me. The budget for the film was $230 million. So far, it has made $361,313,000 and change. As far as the box office, for a Tuesday box office, I think it did well. I still question them. I know they wanted to get the 4th of July crowd in there, but that was midweek holidays to me doesn't, I don't know, Mike can talk about this because he works in it, but it doesn't seem like to me like midweek releases, like a Tuesday release for a holiday, would do that well overall.
Oh, they do.
Do they?
Yes, the 4th of July is huge, and it used to be a lot bigger when GM was a prominent company in America.
Mm-hmm.
Because GM shuts down for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Well, actually, now they don't do that anymore. They shut down for a couple days.
Yeah, well, see, that's what I'm saying. Like it used to be, that used to be like bread and butter, like across the country, and it still is. I mean, it's the only record they were only beat by the first Transformers, which had the same release date in 2007.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of skepticism. I mean, it had the same kind of sting to it that Batman Begins did. I mean, I know it's like two separate, like one's a July 4th opening and the other one's a June 15th opening, but I'm just saying, like, the stigma going against both movies, regardless of how the trailers look. I mean, it was pretty much a similar turnout for two reboots, which is actually kind of interesting now that I think about it. But yeah, July 4th is usually pretty big. In fact, I remember Paramount, even after they sold all their midnight tickets, they bumped the actual opening of the show to 7 p.m. the day before. So yeah,
I remember that.
It's big. It's not a holiday to be screwed with, and it actually kind of fucks over projectionists at movie theaters, because all of a sudden you have midweek openings, but then you also have movies that still come out on Friday. And some movies actually try to come out like the day after the 4th of July. So
yeah,
holidays in general though are pretty busy at the theater anyway.
Yes, Christmas is the biggest.
Yeah, I'm guilty of that.
All right. I mean, like Christmas, it doesn't seem like Christmas. It doesn't matter what day of the week it is. People are going to go to the movies if they are. But for me, in thinking of 4th of July, I always think of like 4th of July weekend, and tons of people will go to the cinemas on the weekend. And to me, 4th of July midweek, it just doesn't seem like you would get the same amount of numbers, no matter what movie it was.
You also have to look at it as it's the 4th of July during the summer, where every day is pretty much a weekender for anyone in school.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
It's only a weekday for people that work. And also it's a national holiday, which means a lot of people have the 4th of July off.
Yeah. All right. So getting into the pros and cons, how do we want to do this, Steve?
Well, I think first, and the reason I put this is because there's definitely other reasons why we like this film and dislike this film. I'd more so just say to kind of more so round off to your top pros of why this makes it a good film, and some of the reasons why it kind of puts negatives against it.
Okay, I think I'm going to take this one first then. I think that, Michael brought up earlier about, or it was either Mike or Dan brought it up earlier about the web shooters versus each other. The organic versus the technological.
I think I did that.
That was Steve.
Okay, it was Steve. Somebody brought it up. Whatever. Now, to me, in the Raimi verse, the web shooters, the organic web shooters in Spider-Man 2, when he was losing his powers, I thought they were going down the road of the man-spider virus,
which would have been cool.
That's what I thought. I didn't think, oh well, they're organic web shooters, they're gonna run out. I didn't think that at all. I thought that it was he was losing his powers for a reason, for the whole man-spider virus reason. And Raimi was like, oh, well, mechanical shooters, it doesn't make any sense. Teenagers aren't that smart. They're not going to get it. I'm sorry. Peter Parker is a friggin' genius.
He's one of the smartest people in the Marvel Universe.
Exactly. He's a friggin' genius. There's no way.
And on top of it, he's a smartass.
Well, okay, wait a minute. I'm gonna save Raimi from this. The organic web shooters is from James Cameron's draft of Spider-Man.
But I remember an interview. It was either it was either a commentary, or I remember an interview with Raimi saying, we're going with the organic shooters because they make more sense for our film, because they make more sense to just put it in with the powers that he gets when he gets the bite. That I remember him saying that. I'm not saying anything against the guy for doing it. I'm just saying, when Steve mentioned earlier about how the web shooters ran out, the organics ran out, I think my reasoning for that wasn't just, oh, well, it just ran out because it ran out. It was because I thought it was going towards the man-spider virus thing. with the mechanical shooters, I like them a lot. I thought they were great. I know a lot of people complain about the muzzle flash, like, oh, why does that have to look like a gun? And I've heard people say that.
I didn't notice that much.
I didn't either.
I didn't notice it that much either. I noticed it a little bit, but it wasn't like a glaring overt thing.
I think it was worse in the trailers, because in the trailer, for me, that scene, for some reason, the way it was cut in the trailer, it made it look like he was dodging bullets.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, yeah, he can, but I was kind of like,
it made more sense in the film.
Yeah, and I didn't see it as muzzle flashes.
For me, overall, the pros are the acting of Martin Sheen and Sally Field as Uncle Ben and Aunt May. While Cliff Robertson, may he rest in peace, and Rosemary Harris did well for the 616 universe, this is essentially a slightly younger versions of Ben and May, because they say like 37 years. I know they've been married a lot longer than that.
I like this rendition of those characters better anyway.
Yeah, I really like this. I like the way the whole thing with not necessarily an argument, but the whole way the relationship between Ben and Peter was. I like the fact that they're trying to delve into his parents' past, because the only time we ever see anything about his parents, at least in media, not in comics, but the only time I've ever seen anything about Peter's parents was in Spider-Man 94, when they did the Six Forgotten Warriors storyline, when they tried to make his parents Nazi spies. So I like that angle on the origin story. I like the workaround to what happened with Uncle Ben. I think that Andrew Garfield is 10 times better as Peter Parker in Spider-Man. I like Tobey Maguire for what it was, but I think his acting style was to the extreme. It doesn't matter. If I'm Peter Parker, I have to take the nerding to the extreme. And if I'm Spider-Man, I have to take if I'm Black Suited Spider-Man, I have to take the emo-ness to the extreme and all that bullshit.
But to be fair, it's the writing.
I know it's the writing, but it's still the acting job as well.
True, but they go according to the writing.
Overall, I liked Garfield a lot better than Maguire. Thank fucking God they replaced Gwen Stacy. I'm sorry. Bryce Dallas Howard, she's hot as hell, but her Gwen Stacy was the worst thing I had ever seen in some
film.
I
did not care for that character at all in Spider-Man 3.
I know that she in the comics is, and Mike might be able to back me up on this, I think I've heard stories that she was a dick to Peter. I know Mary Jane was, but in the 616 universe, she dies at some point. I think it's one of the most popular Spider-Man storylines of all time. I could be wrong.
Yeah,
but
sorry.
Go ahead.
I'll wait for you to finish, and then I have something to say.
The reason why I'm glad that her role got replaced with a different actress is because Emma Stone she portrays her as not as a bitch. And obviously with, Stone and Garfield being a couple, they're going to have chemistry and blah, 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 and all this and all that. And I thought it was refreshing to get a decent Gwen Stacy and not this superficial, snotty little bitch, to quote Caddyshack 2.
Well, okay. What I was going to say that's kind of funny is Kirsten Dunst is a blonde, and they had her play a redhead.
Yeah.
And Bryce Dallas Howard is actually a redhead, and they had her play a blonde. How nice it would have been for those roles to be switched. But yes, in Ultimate Spider-Man, Gwen Stacy actually is actually like on the same level as Peter Parker. They're both like nerds, geeks, if you will. Mm-hmm. And in Spectacular Spider-Man, the short-lived cartoon series, which I love, she actually was basically this. It's basically the same Gwen Stacy. Mm-hmm. She worked for Connors at the University of New York. All that stuff. So it was just nice to see that version of the character where she's nice, she's friendly. but Gwen Stacy's character goes to some crazy extremes in Ultimate Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Mostly involving Carnage.
Yes.
And some actual, something that can only possibly happen in comic books. So I'm kind of hoping they don't ever go there.
Go that route. No.
Go that route in the movies. And I do know that there were some people crying foul, that they hope that Gwen Stacy dies in the next movie.
I hope not.
Okay, this is actually kind of funny because, first of all, she doesn't quote unquote die in Ultimate Spider-Man, so I don't see that happening. Second, you cast Emma Stone as one of your lead characters. Unless she starts rocking the boat, Sony's not going to let anybody kill her. So that's just not going to happen. What I do see is them bringing in somebody as Mary Jane and doing like a love triangle thing.
I think they need to leave that alone, honestly.
But see, that's such an iconic thing for the character, especially anyone that's like followed Ultimate Spider-Man like the last 10 years. Brian Michael Bendis has made it work for like at least 8 of those, where there's just like this love triangle thing going on, and especially if it's like developed over like if it starts in the next movie and it carries over like into the third, like it's just not resolved in one movie. It was fun to watch in a comic. And if you have, Bendis' input and you get Marc Webb back for the relationship stuff, I don't see any reason why it couldn't be fun to watch on screen. But that's just me.
The other things I'll bring up as my pros is I thought Dennis Leary was great as Captain Stacy.
It's hilarious.
The one thing I noticed was Captain Stacy in this film kind of took on the role. Dennis took on the role of Captain Stacy mixed in with J. Jonah Jameson. Because JJJ ain't in this movie at all, and I don't miss that he's not there. If
he'll be a second film, for sure.
If they bring Jameson in, I'm hoping against hope that they'll bring J.K. Simmons back, because he is the only person I think can pull that character off. But Captain Stacy, he has this whole thing, Spider-Man's a criminal, blah, 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 which is the same thing Jameson has, said all along. I really like that. As far as Rice Infans, or whatever the hell his name is, that played Connors, I liked him as Connors, but the Lizard, the whole plot of, I'm going to turn the entire city into Lizard Man. Oh, God, give me a break.
Again, his stuff was cut. So they left what worked for the movie, but a lot of that stuff got cut out of the movie. So
a lot of what stuff got cut out of the movie?
A lot of like his motivations and stuff, because he has like entire conversations with Peter like about doing things, and a lot of it's evident in the trailer. Like he threatens Peter. He's like, if you want to know about your parents, come and get me.
Yeah.
There's that kind of stuff. Like I just feel like his entire character, the villain side of Kirk Connors, is only there just so the movie has a villain. He doesn't really have anything to. We don't get to see his motivations, and I really think all that stuff was cut. So
the reason why we don't get to see his motivations is because they didn't put his wife and son in the fucking movie. The character has a wife and child. That was the whole point. And this is me just going off the 94 Spider-Man cartoon. The whole point of him wanting to get his arm back was to lead a fulfilling life, and then it turned him into the Lizard. There was none of that at all. I don't mark it against the movie. I liked the movie for what it was. I thought that I know this is a dark retelling and everything else. I don't know. My one real gripe, and it's not like a major gripe, it's not a gripe that would make me want to. My one real con about the movie is that outside of Peter taking his mask off in the school during the Lizard fight, I felt that there wasn't enough daytime scenes. I know most of the story takes place at night, the Lizard's in the sewers and all that stuff, but I don't know, I'm hoping in the sequel that we get a little bit more daytime Spidey fighting, because I think that's one of the greatest things about the first 3 films, is because you have Spider-Man out in the daylight. But the whole taking the mask off at certain points, okay, I get why they do that, because it's Andrew Garfield, he's a star. It worked, the star needs to have FaceTime. Well, he has FaceTime as Peter Parker.
Yeah, but nobody wanted to look at Tobey Maguire, so.
Well,
that's because Tobey Maguire had the same expression on his face.
Every single movie.
But I think at least with this, when he took his mask off and people identified with who he was, except for one large exception, like there was ramifications for finding out his identity rather immediately. Like
Yes.
Dennis Leary's character, the Lizard, even though he finds out his identity in probably the lamest way ever by putting your name on your camera, like that's pretty bad. But like I don't have a big issue with. I know people kind of hate that the masks always come off, no matter who. Like in the Avengers, Captain America's mask comes off. It doesn't really bother me all that much. But at least in this, there was some ramifications, except for when Emma Stone found out, that Andrew Garfield was Spider-Man. That was one huge con for me, because it was just like they kind of took the easy way out and made a joke of it, and never really identified that again. Never went back to the fact that she found out he was Spider-Man, and there was really no ramifications whatsoever. It was just kind of like, oh, okay. But besides that, the relationship I thought was really good. But anyways, so I just wanted to make that point.
Yeah. What about you, Steve? What are your pros and cons for this one?
Well, I mean, obviously, I'd say my pro and con would be the web shooters, like I said before. Much bigger fan of the fact that they show brainy Peter Parker instead of dorky. It's almost reminiscent to me anyway, as far as the character portrayals of the 92 Spider-Man cartoon.
94, yeah.
94, whatever. It was early 90s. That's all I remember. But the character portrayals were very close to that as far as like how they acted, with smart ass Peter, but he's intelligent. You have Gwen Stacy, which honestly I'm glad they didn't have Mary Jane in this film. I think that was a pro to me, because I could not stand Kirsten Dunst.
Agreed.
She was kind of like the Megan Fox of Spider-Man.
Yeah, but
Okay,
I'd rather watch.
to look at.
I'd rather watch Kirsten Dunst over Megan Fox.
I would rather watch Megan Fox over Kirsten Dunst.
I had to go with Steve on that one,
because Kirsten Dunst looks like she's drugged out, and Megan Fox is just hot. So neither one can act, but they're both in the films. So, and at least Megan Fox went up against Transformers, whereas what did Kirsten Dunst do? Oh, I fell off a building. But I was much happier with having the Gwen Stacy of Emma Stone in this film. I liked the Lizard. Actually, the funny thing about that is they kind of alluded to Kurt Connors in the Lizard would be a possible thing in the original trilogy.
Mm.
And then they had Gwen Stacy in the final film, and then lo and behold, look what's in the reboot.
Yeah.
I think that was also. I think that might have been Sony's input. That let's just get the Lizard out of the way since we teased him for 3 movies.
Yeah,
let's just do something with it finally.
I mean, he was kind of a throwaway. I mean, they made it work, but he was still kind of a throwaway. But at least they didn't do like the Sandman with Venom with the Green Goblin, Hobgoblin looking thing. I mean, they at least didn't go to that extent, so I was at least happy to see them do that. The whole thing of, I mean, yeah, there's certain characters that haven't been revealed yet, like Osborn, Harry Osborn, Mary Jane, certain ones like that. But I almost wonder whether some of them will be introduced. I don't know. Some of the aspects of the film just kind of work the way they are, and I'm glad they didn't use barely anything from the previous trilogy.
Is that it?
Yes.
Yeah. What about you, Mike?
Well, let's see. I agree with what you guys have said, and of course, I've been interjecting here and there with some things. I want to talk about like 2 cons that I have, 3 actually. One and my mind just went blank. So I'll talk about the easiest one first. The 3D in this movie.
Mm.
I'm not a fan of 3D, as I say on Twitter, and on the couple of shows I've been on with you guys.
Who are we?
However, I will say, just this summer alone, with certain trailers, most notably the Men in Black 3 trailer.
Oh, yeah.
We talked about this with the Avengers because we saw that trailer on the Avengers. The scene where he's falling off the building to time travel in the theater. Great. Well, in the theater, that scene is much longer. Or in the trailer, that scene is much longer, almost to the point of you feel something. Like I can understand getting worked up, like getting emotional, watching a movie, like from the music cues and stuff like that. But I was shown something like on screen that gave me like a physical reaction, not an emotional reaction, a physical reaction. I actually felt like I was falling off a building, and I felt like when Men in Black 3 came out, they cut that trailer because they didn't want people throwing up in the theater. So in the actual movie, right when that stuff was about to hit, all of a sudden it changed. The scene changed, and that feeling went away. And I felt a lot of that with Spider-Man as well.
Mm.
I felt a lot of that with Spider-Man as well, and in the trailers, with the web swinging and stuff, there was a sense of motion, of movement, of being him, like in the first person stuff, and I didn't get that in the movie, and it kind of really bones me up because as much as I don't like 3D, there's a tool that can actually make me feel something, kind of almost like being on a roller coaster, if you will. And you're pulling your punches because you're worried someone might get sick. Well, people go on roller coasters and they don't worry about them getting sick. And I just feel like they're kind of missing out. So that's just one gripe. It's a positive for 3D because you can make me feel something. And I've just never seen that in a 3D movie before, with the exception of like just 2 trailers. The movies don't give me that feeling at all.
Yeah.
One big gripe I had with the movie, which was both, it was when the whole scene was unfolding in the movie, and I'll get to it. Like the bullshit-o-meter was creeping up the entire time. Like it started at 0, and as the scene progressed, it slowly kept ticking up. And it's the scene like towards the end where it's like, it's New York, we gotta show everyone helping out. And there's the crane operators.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so I'm okay. Like I said, the bullshit meter started creeping up as soon as they started running around with the crane operators. It started creeping up, just slowly. I'm like, oh, okay, this is gonna be cool. We're gonna get like an awesome scene of him swinging through the streets and stuff. And the bullshit-o-meter's climbing up, and it gets to 10 when all the cranes are like in line. And I'm like, okay, all right. And then they broke the damn thing and it went to 11 when the fucking helicopter shows up and spotlights him. And it's like, you are here and you have to get to here. And I was like, click, boom, broke. I was like,
I think, sadly, I think this, what they were going for was another train sequence.
But for me, the train sequence was the bridge and saving the kid. That for me was almost up there with the train. Almost up there with the train.
Right, but what I'm saying is, like, as far as a set piece, as far as the action of it all, and as far as the continuing from the bridge and the father saying, "Hey, he saved my kid. We gotta help him." That's what I mean as far as, them kind of catching him in 2, and now they're assisting him here.
Oh,
I think that's what it was. It was trying to copy the train sequence for the citizens' help.
What I'm saying is I'm fine with that. I was fine with all of that. My bullshit meter went to 10, and I was still fine. What broke it was when the helicopter
came in
and was like, look, you're standing right here on this rooftop, and the first crane you have to get is over here. I was just kind of like, Like everything else I was fine with. I thought that scene was really cool. I liked the way it played out. I'm okay with showing a little patriotism, not, unpatriotic or anything like that. I'm just saying, like, I just thought it went one step
Too
too
far.
far to the right of cheesy, and it broke the scene. But as soon as he starts running and then he does his thing, and you've got that little moment where he, misses, and oh look, it's the dad that saves him. Like, that was fine. Uh, that was really the only thing that really bothered me about the movie.
With that, before we move on, I just wanted to jump in with that. With that sequence, I really enjoyed the framing of that sequence, like just the shot of the cranes all coming at the same time. It was very, very cheesy. The execution was a little hokey, but what I like the idea of it, like the idea of Distance being a villain, like Distance having an issue with Spider-Man, because it never really has come up in the movies. Like he always gets to the location with no issue. He's always there, but it actually being a problem, it was kind of a unique idea. Unfortunately, when you think about it, it doesn't really make sense because it's like, well, why doesn't the helicopter just go over and stop the guy? But it is kind of I like the idea of it. I like the framing of it. I like the shot, but it is a little hokey. But
To kind of bullet off your point there, Peter himself had a problem with Distance, and then he solved it with the suit in 2. You got to deliver 10 pizzas in 20 blocks in 5 minutes.
Well, and then actually, what I did not notice on my first viewing when I previewed it, and then I actually read a review for the movie, and then I noticed it when I saw it with Steve. I don't know if you noticed this, Steve, and I don't know if you saw it in IMAX or not. The screen actually opened up. The movie is scope, and usually in an IMAX movie, when it's scope, that for everyone at home, if you have a widescreen TV, scope is what gives you the black bars. If it's flat, if the movie was shot in flat, like an animated movie or whatever, usually on a widescreen TV, you don't have black bars. And I did not notice this until I saw it on second viewing, but the screen opens up to IMAX proportions.
Huh.
All through that web swinging right at the end. So like, and obviously you can't do that in a regular theater because there's no extra screen. But I saw it and I actually noticed it on my second viewing, and I was like, holy crap, this is, all of a sudden I'm seeing so much more of this. And it's the same thing that The Dark Knight did in IMAX, where it was, you've got your standard stuff, and then you've got your stuff that's shot in IMAX. The screen was going up and down the entire movie. I did appreciate that, even though I didn't notice it the first time. I appreciated the physicality of the movie. I thought he had an appropriate fluidity in his movements, and I also appreciated the practical effects and the practical web swinging which was done, and which also leads me, as much as I appreciated that, I don't know why Sony insists on doing the special effects themselves. I'm not sure if it's a money thing, but I know it's like the same issue they had for the most part with the first 3 Spider-Man movies, and obviously they've gotten progressively better. But some of their stuff isn't. Sony cannot match ILM or Weta. I mean, they did an astounding job, and I think one of the reasons the suit looks the way that it does is because that suit may be easier to render in a computer. Because there were a lot of scenes where, because there were a lot of scenes like I won't know until I watch like behind the scenes stuff on the movie where I was like, is that Andrew Garfield or in a practical camera trick, or is that like a CG Spider-Man? Like the stuff when he's like when they're fighting on the ceiling in the high school and they're flipping all over the place. It's like, is that just an upside down shot? Like, did they build the hallway upside down and he's just flipping all over like a madman, or is that like was it done with nothing there and they're just moving the camera down the hallway? I don't know, but I really couldn't tell. All I know is that a lot of the shots in the movie, like Batman Begins, were done practically, and I know a lot of people had issue with the way the lizard looked, but I never thought he was on screen long enough to care.
Yeah.
I did appreciate Peter not being the uber geek. And what I wanted to say is that earlier when we were talking about Tobey Maguire, I felt like he took it to 11, and and he wasn't even smart. I never felt like Tobey Maguire was smart. But there were little things like solving equations or whatever, like just minor little things. I get that sense that Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker is actually one of the smarter people in the Marvel universe. So I appreciate that. I liked Aunt May, and I did appreciate Uncle Ben. And the movie, and I think this is a testament to the music, is because we mentioned how Danny Elfman's score was superior, and I do agree. But this movie is very even keel. Its pacing was really well. I thought the pacing was really good, but I never felt like there was a lot of like peaks and valleys, and I think a lot of that has to do with the music not hitting. Like it didn't. There wasn't a punch to music, so it was like kind of like I think I should be like on the edge of my seat for this scene, but the music isn't telling me to do that.
I watched, in preparation for the show, I watched a couple of the trailers again. And there's one trailer, I forget which one it is. It's either the first one or the second one. I forget what it's not the one with the Mirror's Edge Spider-Man. It's one of the regular trailers where the music is very prevalent in the trailer. And I like that. I thought it was great. But the music in the movie itself, my first thought was, what music? I mean, James Horner is an amazing composer, but when you think of film composers, you think of Danny Elfman, you think of James Horner, you think of Hans Zimmer, you think of all those amazing composers. John Williams, John Dabney,
Michael Giacchino.
Yeah, Michael Giacchino. Yeah, all those people. You think of them, but when I saw, and I actually previewed it on iTunes, the score from James Horner, I was like, yeah, this is not music to me. This doesn't add any, like none of the music in the film really added anything to it. It was just there for background noise.
Yeah. Since you've listened to the soundtrack, was the trailer music at all part of the movie? Because I know a lot of times that doesn't happen.
I'd have to go back and let you know after the show. Because I don't remember offhand without re-listening to it.
Yeah, I remember the trailers having that punch, and it was like this metal, like almost slightly techno vibe to it that actually sounded really cool and ominous and dark, and that wasn't in the movie. The other thing, I had it, and I can't remember what it was. Damn it. Has to do with Peter. I have no idea. It was really good too. I did appreciate all the stuff that they, like when he was in the sewer waiting to find the lizard and he was just sitting there. He made his little web thing.
Oh, I love that scene. That's probably my favorite Spider-Man scene out of the entire film. And I would say my least favorite Spider-Man scene out of the entire film is the slingshot at the end. I got so tired of him using that slingshot move. Go ahead, sorry.
It's a staple. It's a classic. Actually, for me, this is not my original idea. Someone else said this somewhere else. I think it may have been on Spill. But they brought up the idea that the movie actually should have gone to credits after Peter says some promises are meant to be broken, or like he says those are the best kind. You guys still there? Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, because it got really quiet for some reason. But yeah, like he walks into the classroom late and he says, I won't be late again. I promise. Remember, just don't make promises you can't keep. And then he says, those are the best kind. And Emma Stone does a little smile. Like, for me, the movie could have ended right there.
Right.
Because it would have made it. It would have put an emphasis on character, and their relationship and where it's going to go. There is one thing, but I want to do it after you guys have.
Okay. Before Dan goes, the other thing I wanted to point out was since Michael brought up the end of the film, anybody get a Elektra funeral vibe from Daredevil off of Gwen Stacy when she went to Peter's house. I swear to God, as soon as she put up that umbrella, I was like, oh, it's Daredevil with Elektra at the funeral all over again. Because it was raining and all that other stuff.
I almost walked out at Daredevil.
Oh, bite your tongue.
So, no, I'm not going to bite my tongue on that one. I almost walked. Daredevil is one of... I regret not walking out of it. So
Have you tried watching the director's cut? Because it's a way better story.
Yeah, even my buddy says I should watch the director's cut. So I just haven't gotten around to it because for me, I don't even want to give that movie a second try.
No, let's let Dan go with this.
So,
what are your pros and cons for Amazing Spider-Man, Dan?
Okay. Well, I think my biggest pro is I love the visuals of the film. I think there are a number of really great money shots. We touched on one with the sewer scene of, Spidey slowly crawling down the sewer, and that look of him going down and the creation of that web, I thought was fantastic. Even with Andrew Garfield on the subway, with when he first kind of becomes Spider-Man and he does that reaction and lands on top of the subway train, I just love that look. I think he looks like Spider-Man, his lanky physique and the way his arms are. He looks just like Spider-Man. We talked about Andrew Garfield in comparing to Tobey Maguire. I bought Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker, but I never really bought him as Spider-Man. But with Andrew Garfield, I really buy him as both. I think he makes a great Peter Parker. He makes a great Spider-Man. And I think the good thing about that, the reason that works, is the transition between the two is not that large. Like the character, yes, he's more free-willing. He's more talkative and more of a smartass as Spider-Man. But with Peter Parker in the other franchise, like we mentioned, he was just such a huge, 11 nerd when he tries to be, cocky or sarcastic as Spider-Man. It just kind of, it doesn't feel as real. But so that was one of my the visuals. I love the look of the uniform or the costume of Spider-Man. It kind of reminded me a little bit of the Spider-Man 2099 costume meshed with the new look of it. I know a lot of people had issues with it coming in. I remember when the first images of the new Spider-Man costume hit the web, through leaked photos, people thought it looked ridiculous, but on screen it really worked for me. And two, I think what this did really well is this really isn't Spider-Man's origin, it's really Peter Parker's origin. It's really where the focus of the film is seeing Peter Parker kind of deal with, not having a father, deal with the responsibility of Uncle Ben's death. In a way, we talked about how this film cut out a lot. You can cut out a lot of the Spider-Man aspects, and what you have is really good drama about a boy coming of age, dealing with family issues. And that part of the film was really strong, and it really complemented a lot of the action. Looking at some of the negatives, though, knowing Marc Webb doesn't have a lot of experience with action, you can kind of tell because he definitely relied a lot on assistant directors when it came to the action scenes. And while I enjoyed the action scenes, there's a tonal shift when you look at them and when the feeling of them, they sometimes don't feel like the same movie. It's not a huge comparison, it's not a huge issue, but they do kind of feel awkward at times. And we mentioned the Lizard. If you look at the Spider-Man villains up to this point, each film had an example of like a good guy gone bad or a nearly good guy getting messed up because of science turning evil. And I was hoping there'd be something different with this film. Obviously, with the Lizard, we know that's not the case. But a lot of the scenes of Dr. Connors in the sewers trying to going on these monologues about what he's trying to do, I thought those were rather bad. The performance was fine, but what he was saying, I thought this is kind of it feels like filling. It doesn't feel. Yeah. It feels really generic, and you could really have gotten rid of that. It didn't do anything. It didn't really make his motivations any clearer. You could have got rid of those moments, and you really wouldn't have done much with the film. Mm-hmm. But I think the best part of the film, by far, is the relationships of the characters. From seeing Peter Parker with Aunt May and Uncle Ben, the Uncle Ben and Peter Parker relationship is so strong in this, and how they dealt with the death of Uncle Ben, the fact that he's right there when it happens, I think was a nice little twist on it. Obviously, they can't do the wrestling thing, and they did a little nice little tip of the hat to the wrestling aspect of Spider-Man. But I really enjoyed that moment.
you mentioned the Uncle Ben stuff, and what I liked about this version of the Uncle Ben death was that instead of Uncle Ben dropping him off and him going somewhere else and staying mad, you've got him going off and being mad because they didn't tell him about his parents, and Uncle Ben leaves him a voicemail. He goes to check it, but then he hangs up. And then we're like, well, wait, you got to listen to what the hell your uncle said. He just died. But he doesn't go back to it till the very end, and I liked how they did that. At first, I was like, wait a second, don't you have to listen to that?
Yeah. I thought when they were playing at the end, I thought that's when the line "great power comes with great responsibility" was going to happen, because I was waiting for it.
As far as Martin Sheen not saying it, I don't mind it.
I think it's fine. I think it's okay. It's there, and you can see it in the film. No one says it, but it's obviously a big part of it. So
yeah, and I think the problem with it is, though, with the story of this version of Spider-Man, is that they more so took away from Uncle Ben to give that, like if his father was to ever say that, like if his father said it to him as a kid, that's when I would have expected the line to come. I would have expected it in this film to come from his dad, and I think that's what they were going for with the emotional part of it. Was, yes, Uncle Ben is still there. Uncle Ben is still his father figure, but it wasn't like the other versions of Uncle Ben at all. What were you going to say, Mike?
Well, I was Dan reminded me of what I was going to try and say earlier. That's the first thing.
Okay.
I actually felt like everything in this movie, and again, I haven't seen the first one in a while, but I felt like a lot of stuff in this movie, almost all of it, served a purpose, if you will.
Right.
When I was watching the trailers, the one thing about the trailers that rubbed me wrong almost every time I saw it, but not because I think there's anything wrong with it, but just because I felt like it was kind of dated, was Peter Parker the skateboarder.
Yeah.
It rubbed me wrong in the trailers because I was like, now you're just trying to be hip and cool and be all young. But at the same time, when it played out in the movie, I was like, it made sense.
It made so much sense.
It was like, and it's one of those things where, Tobey Maguire in the first one, he had to he's trying to figure out how his powers work and stuff like that. But you have to remember, Tobey Maguire in the first one also wasn't this go get 'em guy. He was like, I'm gonna go home and open a book. This Peter Parker, one of the ways they got around him experimenting, if you will, was showing that he already had the confidence to do some of this stuff.
Yeah.
And really what him getting these powers allowed him to do was to just enhance what he was able to do.
I love how they show that training montage.
Yeah, I thought it was really good. I thought the scene on the subway was really good. I know a lot of people felt like that scene was too quick because it was on his way home from Oscorp.
Yeah.
But it's kind of it's whatever. I mean, the other Tobey Maguire's was overnight. I mean,
yeah. Well, the thing with Tobey Maguire's was, and again, this goes back to more geek, less intelligence, or not showing the fact that Peter Parker is a scientific genius. Is in the first film, you had it focusing on him because it was organic versus technology. You had it focus, on him looking at his fingers, and then him realizing he can climb walls, then him realizing he can leap tall buildings in a single bound, and all this and all that BS. With this one, Peter had to use his brain. Peter had to, figure out a way to... And it wasn't like he was a professional skateboarder. I mean, he did it for fun. He did it to get around, so I don't quite mind that.
There was one moment I think I could do without, and that's definitely the dunk. I thought that was really...
Oh, yeah.
That was just it looked horrible. I'm like, it felt like a scene from the 1990s. I'm like,
yeah, I will agree. The dunk was a little
everything leading up to that, though, was gold.
Yeah, I agree. I like that scene. I'm like, why did they... I mean, I guess they have to try to figure out a way, like, how can we get him expelled? And I guess by dunking, I think that might be a first. I don't know anyone else that was expelled or suspended from school from dunking, but I just think
he wasn't though. He only got community service.
But even community service was kind of like, all right. But anyways, that was just one moment. I'm like, really, we're gonna have him dunk now? But it could have worked, but just the way it was shot, it looked like a scene from like Saved by the Bell or something. Just it looked like a TV moment, not an actual like movie moment. It was just really bad. But I like you mentioned, there was a lot of talk about how, which I noticed is, Spider-Man, he's supposed to have like wheels on the bottom of his shoes. Is that correct? Like I noticed when he was like the one action moment when he was with the truck, are there supposed to be wheels on the bottom of his shoes?
I never heard any of that.
No.
People have talked about that, and I saw a few things, but with him being escaped, I thought they were going to try that in. I didn't notice it myself, but I heard people say that happened. I didn't see it.
Well,
so.
I think people think that's what happened because of how the scene looked, but that's relatively. I've seen that stunt pulled in other movies with the shoes being pulled by a truck, and no one's ever complained about them having wheels. I think that was just them trying to make fun of the boots.
Yeah. Which I thought were fine. I thought that was really big nitpicking, but I found that interesting.
It's one of the other nitpicks that someone could make, and I won't make it. I mean, I'll bring it up here, but I don't hold it against the movie at all. Is the web shooters had nothing? There was no trigger for the web shooters. He made the web shooters out of watch pieces, but there was no trigger in his palm. He had no actual, It's just one of those. You can get nitpicky about this stuff if you want to. I never held it against the movie. Did you guys hold it against the movie that he didn't create the webbing?
No, I think that makes more sense because I really don't need a long sequence about him coming up with a formula to create webbing. For him to order it, I think that's not a big issue. I think it'll be interesting in future films if he kind of uses that formula and kind of makes his own webbing, like you see, like in the 94 cartoon. Often, depending on whatever villain he's fighting, he has to adjust
stronger webbing,
or adjust it to fit whatever he needs. So I think having the mechanical webbing is a good thing, and I'm fine with it. Him.
I am too. I just know there are some people that are like, yeah, it's cool that they made the web shooters, but he didn't make the webbing. And for me, I just kind of flipped it back on. I was like, if you think about it and you pay attention to the movie, his dad kind of made that webbing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like it was made by a Parker. Just let it go.
He was entitled to it.
So, yeah. So
it was his birthright.
What also I think this film did really well is it had a lot of really good small moments like that kind of told you a lot, but without telling you a lot. Like in the beginning where they go down in the basement and it's flooded, and they're talking about what the issue is, and Uncle Ben says something, and Peter Parker says no, it's this, to kind of hint to the fact that he is rather mechanical. Then he has this thing in his door. I mean, it's they're obvious, but it's a little bit. At least that okay, he's done stuff to make it. This isn't the first thing he's built. He has some experience in this field, and it adds to the fact that we buy him as an intelligent person. And two, one scene I really liked was a conversation between Peter Parker and Captain Stacy, and just seeing their back and forth, and seeing how the innocence of Peter Parker in Spider-Man can really have a negative effect on crime. Like how they talked about how why wasn't that thief caught, and he's explaining, well, catching a thief isn't always the best thing. There's a format and there is a method to the cop's madness sometimes, and actually what you did there, or what Spider-Man did there, actually hurt the police more than helping them, because he was leading them to to the actual creators of the crime rather than just a normal car thief. So I like that back and forth, seeing how Spider-Man didn't know. He's still in the beginning stages, so he doesn't really know what he's doing, and how he can actually have a negative impact just because he kind of he acts before he thinks about what's going on.
Yeah, and I really like that scene too, because he's calling. It's because Peter doesn't, like you said, Peter doesn't see that he's doing all this stuff, and he starts talking about the clues and how he's only targeting like one type of criminal, and so it's like he is just out for revenge, if you will. He's not helping the regular guy on the bridge, the kid in the bridge. He's just
but then he was guided by Captain Stacy about it.
Yeah, so
inadvertently.
It's kind of like I felt like between Uncle Ben and between Captain Stacy, I feel like all the classic who building Spider-Man into who he's going to become was handled just fine.
Yeah. His motivations were really well played out. They didn't happen instantly. You saw them kind of gradually as he has that instant anger and he wants to stop and get back at this guy who killed his dad. And then there's that moment on the bridge where you see he sees a bigger picture and that he can actually be more than just revenge. He can actually do good. And I like the fact that it wasn't instantaneous. It kind of played out over a sequence of different events and it all led up to that final moment, which is maybe why I like that moment more than a lot of people of that crane sequence of seeing it all tie together and see everything up to that point leading to him finally realizing what his quote unquote destiny is.
I think that I don't know. It could be wrong. I could be wrong on this, but was Spidey didn't show up till after the first hour, right? He wasn't actually in the suit.
It was quite a while.
It took quite a while. Now my question is, I don't mind that because I liked seeing Andrew Garfield as Peter Parker. I liked seeing a different version of Peter and a different portrayal of him. My question would be, do you think that the mainstream people that are going to go see this are going to be like, God, this is an awful long time to not have the suit on him yet?
It's two different. We can go back to take a look at Batman Begins. You do not see Batman for an hour.
Right.
And even after that, you still don't see him very much. They actually the Incredible Hulk kind of suffers from too much too soon, if you will. The opening of Incredible Hulk was originally much longer. There was a lot more story and depth to the character in there, and Universal was like, no, people are paying to see the Hulk. You've got to see him within 30 minutes. I actually can kind of appreciate seeing the evolution, if you will, of how they get to where they are.
I do too. Yeah.
I don't. In everyone that I've talked to, I was actually expecting a lot of people to not like this movie, and everyone that I've seen it with, or personally know that has seen it, only 2 people, or 3 people, I should say, have not. They just thought the movie was kind of meh. And then I only know one person that outright hated it.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about that hack.
I'm not friends with him by any means, but I wasn't surprised that he hated it. But my sister, her boyfriend, and my fiance all walked out of the movie saying, it was just a Spider-Man movie. They weren't blown away by it or taken aback by it or anything like that. It was just another movie to them. And I didn't even feel like taking the time to try and justify their reaction because they're entitled to that. But
yeah,
I was actually kind of expecting that a lot more, especially from people that I work with. But no, everyone, with the exception of those 4 people, seemed to have really appreciated the movie, even though it was 5 years since the last one. So,
yeah. Steve, do you have any final thoughts before we move into what we're hoping or would like to see in a sequel?
Not really.
I honestly, when it comes to the Marvel sequels now, regardless if it's Sony or Fox or Marvel themselves doing it, at this point, I'm just looking forward to them. As far as Amazing Spider-Man goes, me personally, I assume they're going the route of Norman Osborn / Green Goblin. I don't know if that's going to happen, because I know, like I said earlier, people have said to me, oh, well, it could be Electro, it could be this, could be that, could be Mysterio, whatever. For me, in the context of Amazing Spider-Man, with Norman's lackey throughout the entire film, and then that scene at the end, at the end credits, I assume that that's Norman in the Goblin suit. I just assume that. Just the way that the movie played out, that's the way it felt to me. As far as a sequel, I don't know where they're going to go with this story. I don't know what villain they're going to use next. I hope it's really, really good. I hope they don't bring in a Doc Ock again. I
want to see Mysterio.
I agree. I don't think that would be a bad idea, but I don't want them to bring in Doc Ock again, because we had such an amazing story with him in Spider-Man 2. Mike, what about you? What are you predictions for the sequel?
Well, first I can tell you about what I've heard around Amazing Spider-Man 2. One is that Sony, whether people choose to believe it or not, Sony probably knew what they had and they immediately hired. They have not announced Marc Webb is coming back. They have not announced that, but
Right.
they did announce, for better or worse, I don't know how you guys feel about them, but Alex Kurtzman and Robert Orci are taking over writing for Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Well, they did good on They do well on Transformers Prime, the cartoon, so I can be optimistic about that.
And they did good with the first Transformers film, and they did good with the Star Trek reboot. However, they have been a part of other train wrecks and other films like, The Island. They've been a part of TV shows that have flopped. They've been a part of Transformers 2, kind of so-so with it, which was complete crap. And then, it's kind of a hit or miss on that front.
Well, for better or worse, they're a commodity in Hollywood. So
right.
Whereas I didn't really know anybody that was in that writing script. At least now they're bringing on like a team. Like it's to Sony is important enough for it to be a thing. The other thing that I've heard is conflicting reports. One comes from Sony in that they want a trilogy. Duh, obvious.
Right.
The other one comes from the producers on the film. Apparently, they are trying to talk Sony into going the Avengers route with Spider-Man.
Going the Avengers route.
Well, and here's
Amazing Friends.
No. This is how they want to play it out, which is you introduce a different villain over so many movies,
and then you get the Sinister Six or the Okay, yeah, I could see that.
So
I could really see that.
That now, like I said, it's conflicting because the producers are saying they want to do this, and Sony is saying we're only giving you 3. So it's kind of like I'm willing to bet at this point it's like they're getting 3, so it's like performance based.
Right.
So it's like if the movies keep doing better and they keep making money, then they'll let them do like another 3 movies after their original trilogy, which I think would be, if they can do it, fine. As for the villain, as for getting back to Amazing Spider-Man 2, Rise, the guy that played Connors, has said in an interview, and we know interviews go either way, and misinformation is spilled and all this stuff, but he has actually said that is not Norman Osborn in the cell. At least that's not the name that was on the script. For me personally, I don't care who they put in the second movie as the villain, although Mysterio would be really cool, again, if they go with the ultimate version of Mysterio, which he does not have a fishbowl for a head. And in the Ultimate Universe, he's actually more of a terrorist.
Yeah, we don't need a terrorist Spider-Man movie.
Well, see, I think it would be interesting. I mean, he's not like a full-blown, like, I'm gonna tear down a building or anything, but he's definitely like he's more volatile, like the Joker.
Okay.
But he's it's kind of if I had to guess, it'd be like if you really bad here. If you mashed the craziness of the Joker with the precision of Bane into like one person.
Ooh.
That's how Mysterio kind of plays out. Like he's always got a plan, but he's always ready to improvise.
Okay.
And he always and so as long as the other thing I would like to see is the ultimate version of the Green Goblin, which is more Hulk-like, which I think would be really cool. And they kind of set that up with the side effects of the lizard serum, if you will, which induced a dual personality.
Yeah.
Which would totally set up some amazing, it's got amazing ramifications. And as I said earlier, I think the movie really lends itself to building a world, which the first ones, I honestly felt like the first 3 movies were kind of narrow in their scope. Like everything just kind of happened around Peter and Spider-Man. And this one, I feel like Peter
he's involved.
I feel like he can get knocked around by outside forces that the audience and him don't see coming. It can come from all sides.
Yeah.
What about you? I just want to see a good movie. I just want to see a good movie.
Yeah. What about you, Dan?
Well, with the sequel, one thing I would like to see. I know a lot of people had an issue with the fact that, and Peter Parker, the last line. Some of those are the best promises. The ones that you'll break, because Spider-Man 1, that iconic moment of him walking away, and how of a kind of a ballsy move that was. But I think it'd be kind of an interesting. The reason why Spider-Man always tries to stay out of relationships is because he doesn't want to endanger the people around him. Well, if you look at the Spider-Man films, he's not in relationships, but yet he still endangers the people around him. So it's kind of like, well, if you're going to have this sacrifice, well, your sacrifice really isn't doing anything. So with this,
you do, damned if you don't.
Exactly. But with this, he is he's willing to take on that relationship. So I would like to see that have a negative impact. That would be a huge moment if we saw the fact that he's still learning about responsibility. He embraces a relationship with Gwen Stacy, and then that leads to her inevitable downfall of how the death of Gwen Stacy. If they go that route, maybe they won't. But I think it would be interesting to see that his ability to embrace relationship and how that can negatively impact the people around him. I think that would be a different twist on kind of the same idea. Regarding villains, I don't know who they could do. And there's the talk of that Venom spin-off film, so I don't know if they're going to try to tie that into the same universe or what they're going to try to do, or how that's going to work. One I think that could be interesting would be Kraven the Hunter. That could work. I mean, Spider-Man has a great rogues gallery. He probably has the best one of all Marvel characters.
Yeah.
So there's a ton to choose from, and I think the idea of doing a Sinister Six type of film would be great. I think that would be really interesting. I guess the issue would be, how does he overcome that issue? Do you have to bring in other characters? Would you have to kind of have a Venom or someone to kind of, a good Goblin, or someone to kind of assist him with that? But I don't know. I'm curious who they get to direct it. I think that's going to be the biggest key. I think that's going to, the script writers have a lot to say, but I think at the end, with a lot of films, it's the director can do a lot. It can be the big factor of what happens. But I don't know. I'm actually really excited to see where this franchise can go, and I think it kind of opened itself up to a lot of possibilities.
What about you, Steve?
Not to reiterate everything that Mike or Dan said, I have to agree that a lot of this stuff is. I'd like to see a lot of those things, but like they also said, he has such a huge rogues gallery. I'd like to see something new rather than reiterating. I mean, the Green Goblin is basically Spider-Man's version of Batman's Joker. So I mean, it's been done. I think they need to, if they're going to do it, they can wait a film or two, have them kind of set up maybe in the third film, even if they do the Sinister Six in the third film using Green Goblin. But I mean, there's, you have Electro, you have, Mysterio, you have the Vulture. There's so many different ones that they could use to just be different, that I'd just like to see what they do with it next.
The one thing, as far as just being able to keep I guess you could say, the sanctity of what Spider-Man 2 was with the story of Otto Octavius, I hope they don't bring in the Doc Ock. I also hope they don't bring in Hydro Man. That would be just as dumb as the Sandman was in Spider-Man 3. That would be a downfall of this franchise if they bring in Hydro Man. The Sinister Six thing intrigues me. It could work. As far as bringing people in to team up with him, I don't know how they would do that. Unless Sony and Marvel and Disney created a deal where, or unless Sony gave up the rights and they reverted back to Marvel, and Marvel could then take the story with Sinister Six and work it into Avengers, and you could have the team up of, War Machine, Iron Man, whatever else. I don't know.
Who has the rights to Fantastic Four?
Fox.
Fox. Okay.
Which is kind of, it's putting Marvel in a bind for some things.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because Fox has Fantastic
X-Men.
Four. They have X-Men.
But Fantastic Four is like a perfect gateway into like other realms, which is where they want to go with the Avengers. Fantastic Four is a gateway to like other universes in the Marvel universe. And the fact that Marvel doesn't have that is like, it's, we talked about with the Avengers, it's the reason they couldn't use the Skrulls. It's the reason that, certain things are unfolding the way they are.
Marvel kind of shot themselves in the foot when they let all these different studios take on all their different separate titles.
Yeah.
Because now that they're, under Marvel Entertainment, Marvel Studios or whatever, I mean, they're, like you said, they've kind of screwed themselves into a corner where they can't use certain aspects because of that reason.
Well, they kind of had to. That they kind of wouldn't be where they are. Like they didn't have the.
True.
They were bankrupt basically. Like, there was a good chance Marvel was going out of business. Like movies is what saved that company, and it has screwed them. Like you mentioned, they kind of are SOL right now.
I mean, they have done really well with like having Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, Hulk, and the Avengers all kind of in the one continuity. So that has helped them tremendously. But I honestly would like to see Marvel reobtain these franchises and possibly not reboot them, but keep on with the current actors.
Yeah, that's where I think they would run into an issue is if for whatever reason Sony will not relinquish the rights to Spider-Man.
Well, neither will Fox.
Well, I know, but Spider-Man is a bigger piece of the Marvel universe than there is a dividing line in the Marvel universe. You have X-Men, and then you have the Avengers. Fox has, or there's X-Men and the Avengers, and then what Fox has and Sony has is the well, first of all, Marvel has the Avengers, right? But Fox has X-Men, those are the two camps, right? But Fox also has the glue between those two universes, which is Fantastic Four. The other glue in the Marvel universe is Spider-Man, and that is owned by Sony. And what I was saying earlier, and as much as we talked about during the Avengers, and I said earlier that I really felt like, because Brian Michael Bendis is an employee of Marvel. He's been the curator of Spider-Man for like the last decade for them, and I feel like the fact that Sony let Marvel help means that they're talking, and with the way this movie is set up. And like I said, it looks like it could have been a Marvel Studios movie. I do agree with Steve that if, Marvel and Disney dump a truckload of money on Sony and take the rights back, or
even if they contracted it to those companies, let the companies still hold the rights and then still collaborate story-wise.
Well, that's what I think that's what our Amazing Spider-Man did, which set up the characters so that can happen. I think that's why they made the scope of his movie so much larger. But what I was going to say is, as far as like a Sinister Six movie goes, Spidey usually takes them on himself. In everything I've ever seen, usually they gang up on him and they get the upper hand and they beat him down and he retreats. And he's like, crap, I just got the shit kicked out of me. But then he gets smart about it and he develops new webbing, or he gets some like special action figure prop and comes back at them. So I don't really think he needs to like team up with anybody, because I don't think Sony really has any other Marvel characters to use besides Spider-Man and his Rogues Gallery.
I was thinking more so because of the Venom spinoff. Like, they're obviously, if they're going to make Venom into his own movie, they're going to probably make him some type of anti-hero. So I thought if they're going to establish that character, that might be a way they're going to try to bridge those two properties into one. If that'd be one way to do it, but it's not like you mentioned. I doubt it would happen, but it might be one way.
I would not be surprised to see, like, especially since now that Marvel has Disney money. I would not be surprised to see them. It's beneficial to like Fox and Disney and Sony. It's beneficial to cross-pollinate those characters. In forming this larger world that that's been laid out. So it would be. I really wouldn't be surprised. Obviously, before Ultimate Spider-Man or Amazing Spider-Man, we said it's a lot of us thought it's not a possibility, it could never happen. But after seeing it, I kind of think I'm not going to say it couldn't happen. I'm just not going to say it.
Yeah, the whole time we've been talking about potential plots for the sequel or future multiple sequels or trilogies, I seriously doubt this would happen, but one thing I would absolutely love, and I know a lot of people don't like this, I would like to see a Clone Saga. I would like to see multiple Spider-Men from multiple dimensions, and him, the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, have to lead them against some big bad. I know it's never going to happen, and I'm taking this mainly from the Spidey 94 cartoon, but I think in what they did with Amazing Spider-Man, it could be done. I don't think they'll do it, but I would love to see that. That would be kind of cool.
I think you'd be more likely to. I think you'd be more likely to see if, say, like we talked about, bringing Spider-Man into the Avengers, maybe like a Secret Wars type of situation. I think you'd see that before the Clone Wars, because I think the Clone War, like saying Clone Wars to a lot of Spider-Man fans is like sacrilege. They kind of that saga is a lot of.
Well, I enjoyed it for what it was in the cartoon series.
Yeah, I think in the cartoon series it was actually better handled than the comic, but I don't see that working within the Marvel with the Spider-Man universe they created. It's possible. Yeah. I mean, I never thought the Avengers would work with the Iron Man universe, but the progression allowed it to kind of work.
So, but having like multiple Spider-Men, I think would become too convoluted and people would get confused, and people would kind of panic because of that.
Might be a good way to sell toys.
I think we'll get, especially now that we're talking about the Venom spinoff. I think we'll get a proper Venom lead up, especially with him having other reasons to be angry. I think we'll get that. I personally would like to see Carnage. And one of the other reasons I think we might see a little cross-pollination is because Kevin Feige, or I don't even know if that's his actual name.
Yeah, just go with that.
He's said that he would like to lead up to Civil War in like Avengers 3. And
Lord,
you can't do Civil War without Spider-Man.
Without Spidey, yeah.
So I think there's discussions that that people aren't talking about.
Yeah, I think
I
think that's the only way you can go with Avengers 3, because if they're going Thanos Avengers 2, I don't think you can get in a grander scope. So to make it more of a a Civil War type of situation, I think that would be kind of a great way to end it. I don't know if that will end it. I don't know how far they can take this, but I think that would make a lot of sense. And I think dollar signs is going to do it, because I think Sony sees that that they won't be released by them, but they can make off pretty well if they allow them to use Spider-Man for a film or two. So.
Oh yeah, I mean it's just one of those things. I mean, it's like you print money if you especially all around. I mean, that's especially for like the third Avengers movie after we've been through so many other like Marvel movies. It'll kind of I hate to say it, but it may be wearing out its welcome. But I think if you save that for, and you're like, they come out at Comic-Con like the year before and they're like, Andrew Garfield's on the roster, and everyone goes, oh my god. I don't know. I just think it's a license to print money if you start crossing everything over.
Now, before we go to commercial break, just one more thing I want to say, adding into this conversation. I think that being with the huge success of Marvel Studios, having all these separate films going into the Avengers, I think that the other studios are finally getting their heads out of their asses and are willing to more so work with Marvel so that they all can share in that big pool of money.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that, like you guys discussed, I'm hoping it actually comes to fruition.
Yeah, I'm just not saying never anymore.
Anything's possible in today's age.
Yeah.
Hey, if they're going to make a Guardians of the Galaxy movie, anything is possible.
And with that, And with that, we'll be going to commercial. We'll be back with our final thoughts after this.
You can now hear the Geekcast Radio Network on Stitcher Smart Radio. Stitcher allows you to listen to your favorite shows directly from your iPhone, Android phone, BlackBerry, or Palm phones. On demand and on the go. Don't have Stitcher? Download it for free today using promo code GeekCastRadio at Stitcher.com/GeekCastRadio or in the app stores. Stitcher Smart Radio, the smarter way to listen to radio.
Welcome to a collaboration between the Geekcast Radio Network and the Pop Culture Network. This is From the Command Center, the podcast. I am your host, TFG and Mike from the GCRN, and joining me is Zordon himself. Scotty Cash.
That's right, Scotty Cash from the Pop Culture Network, and today we're introducing you to the audio version of From the Command Center, the podcast that will entail our intake on Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the episodes, the seasons, and all that other good stuff.
Is this thing on? Oh, goody. Why, hello there. It's your dear old Uncle Joker here. I bet you're asking yourself, what could I be possibly doing here of all places? Well, I'm laughing at the fact that this new podcast presented by Geekcast Radio is called Legends of the Dark Knight. Who the heck knew the Bat was so popular? Ugh. Join Steve, Mike, and sometimes Tara for reviews on the greatest DC animated universe cartoon to ever meet Gotham City. So join moi for the talk of the town, or I'll send Captain Clown after you. He gets mighty angry when he doesn't get to have his garbage skull. So put on a nice big smile and join us for the next Geekcast Radio Network podcast, Legends of the Dark Knight.
Hey, I'm Gary.
I'm Mike.
I'm Chuck.
And I'm Justin.
Join the four of us every week on the internet's #1 and longest-running G.I. Joe podcast, What's on Joe Mind?
It's Joe news, reviews, and interviews like you've never heard them before, delivered right to your MP3 player.
Our guests include Jason Marsden, Kevin Michael Richardson, and Matt Yang King from G.I. Joe Renegades, Larry Hama, Robert Adkins, and John Barber from IDW Publishing, and many more from around the online Joe community.
Yeah, it's guys talking about Joe. Think of it as Joe Talk meets Sports Talk. And we make fun of Chuck.
Right, and we... Hey, again?
Come on, Chuck. We're just kidding, kinda.
Sometimes Chuck makes fun of himself.
Right, and we... Okay, seriously, this is just getting ridiculous now.
It's What's on Joe Mind, every week on the Geekcast Radio Network, InsidePulse.com, Stitcher Smart Radio, and iTunes. Download and listen today.
I suppose I still can't say something about Transformers, can I?
Good.
No.
What about sports?
That sounds good.
Yeah, that's all right.
Alrighty, and we're back. So, final thoughts. What would your final rating be for this film after all of the discussion we've just gotten done with and having seen the film?
Dan, go ahead.
Are we doing 1 to 5 scale, or how we?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I gave it 3.5 stars out of 5. I thought there's a lot of great elements. I think the negatives are really strong negatives that kind of took the film down and made like the last climactic battle I thought was kind of lackluster. But overall, I think it's a great setup to the future of Spider-Man. I think I would place this higher than Spider-Man 1, but not nearly as high as Spider-Man 2. So, but I'm very curious to see where it's going to go.
Mike?
Gonna go kind of controversial here with this. Of the summer movies, it's my favorite. I actually did have more fun with it than the Avengers, but I think that's because there was just more character, which is I like character in movies. And I don't really feel like, and Avengers had 5 other movies of character, but to me, the Avengers didn't have character. Avengers was just the culmination of 5 other movies. So in my mind, Avengers is kind of just like some kind of weird mutated amalgamation of nerdism, of a nerdgasm. I don't. So I like Spider-Man more than the Avengers. I'll just flat out say it. I do think it's worth seeing. I don't think the 3D added or subtracted anything. It was just good. So,
Steve.
I am kind of at a crossroads tide as far as the Marvel films go. I like Spider-Man for the character development, and I love Avengers for the characters they have and the action. So it's kind of hard for me to weigh either one. I can't really say it'll be my favorite movie for the summer, only for the fact that I loved Avengers 2, and I'm waiting for the Dark Knight Rises. So it's going to be kind of I'll make my final decision when we do that episode of which 3, how I rate them. But I would give this film probably like a 4.5 out of 5, just because I feel like it blew away the previous 3 films, despite retelling some of the aspects all over again. And I feel it had better casting. So,
for me, simply for the casting, for the effects and the action. Well, some of the action was kind of hokey, but Marc Webb hasn't really done much other than 2 music videos and 1 summer movie. I would probably also give it a solid 4. I'm not going to give it a half point, but I would give it a solid 4 out of 5 for this episode, because now that I've talked about it and I've heard other people. When I wrote that initial review on the site, it was like as soon as I got home and I was just blown the hell away. But having heard everyone's opinions on it here and other places, I have to give it a 4 out of 5, because I'm sorry, the lizard plot was just fucking stupid. It just was. The whole, I'm going to build this machine to turn everybody in Manhattan into lizard men. That's just dumb to me. And as we said in the episode, they never showed his motivations. I love that they, paid attention to Peter's character versus just, hey, here's his powers, and now he's in the suit. I did like that, but yeah, 4 out of 5 for me.
So I would like to thank our panel of hosts here on the episode discussing The Amazing Spider-Man. Is there anything that you guys would like to pimp out before we go?
I'm good.
Okay.
You can read my written review on Geekcast Radio. Also have up recently a few other posts, the top films of the year so far and whatnot. But all my stuff is on Geekcast Radio. So,
Mike?
Let's see. Well, we've got coming up a bunch of Toycast stuff. We've got the SDCC post show coming up. We've got Steve, who is going to TFCon in Toronto, so we'll have a TFCon pre and post podcast for Toycast. M-Wire's coming back in full force. We've got, by the time this goes up, we'll have 3 episodes of M-Wire pre-recorded. Tooncast Beyond Season 2 starts pre-recording at the end of this month. And yeah, all as there is now for summer is When the Fire Rises.
As for myself, I have 2 G.I. Joe DVD reviews I have yet to finish. Only because things have been so busy, I haven't had time to actually finish it. So those should be up shortly after this episode gets posted, and then I have a additional DVD review for Transformers Prime that I was recently sent. So that will be done as well. And and again, TFCon, and so that should be it. So with that, You can contact us via Twitter. My name is at SCP21. What are your Twitter names?
TF2 and Mike.
Movie Revolt.
At Booth Ninja 81.
Thank you for joining us for this M-Wire special comic book summer special. Join us next time when we sit down and discuss The Dark Knight Rises. Thank you for listening. Until next time.
So you want to, I don't know.
Want to what?
I don't know, we could, or we could do something else, or we could, if you don't, I mean, like, we could.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, either one.
You've just listened to Movie Weekend Review on GeekCastRadio.com. If you would like to leave feedback on the show, there are many ways to do so. First, you can visit the website, GeekCastRadio.com, where you can comment on the episode and all of our different podcasts. Be sure to rate our show on iTunes and leave us feedback. You can follow us on Twitter at GCRNMwire. Become a fan of us on Facebook by searching Geekcast Radio Network. You can email us at feedback@geekcastradio.com. Call the voicemail line 502-526-5821. Please remember to tell us the show you're leaving the message for and your name. So until next time, unleash the geek in you.
In a world, there, I said it, happy